I have been blogging for 10 years. Along the way I've had some interesting adventures, maybe some misadventures, but I've learned a lot about marketing in terms of working with my blog, in the companies I've worked for, in the clients I've worked for. But I really haven't thought about branding that much. I've been thinking about branding more in the last few years and how brands affect marketing and how they're integrated and how your brand and your blog can work together. So I want to share a few lessons from these adventures I've had to help you with your blog, your branding, and your goals. This is The Art of the Brand. My name is Wade Kwon, as you heard, and I'm thrilled to be here in front of the Rocket City bloggers this morning. Thank you for coming out. My Twitter name is @WadeOnTweets. If you want to tweet any of this presentation, feel free to do so. Don't be shy about sharing it. You can share it on Snapchat or Instagram or Meerkat or Periscope. You can live stream this if you want to. If you have questions, just raise your hand. Don't wait till the end. I'll be happy to take questions throughout the presentation. On those postcards, there's the link to the slides. So if you want to take a look at them now, if you want to take a look at them later, it's right there for you. You can even scan it with your phone and jump right to the site. But please take a look at them, because on the slides there are examples from everyone's blogs of branding done right. I went through and looked at blogs in Huntsville, I looked at blogs in Birmingham, and what you'll see is some consistency, some thoughtfulness, some small design touches that do a lot to extend a blog's brand beyond just the front page. So I encourage you to look at those slides. I've got extra postcards, so feel free to take extras to share with other people. Do you have a question? Okay. So in talking about blogs and branding, I want to hit 3 points today. First, setting up goals. What's the finish line going to look like for you? And what does that have to do with your brand and your blog? The second thing I want to talk about is defining your values. What does your company stand for? What does your blog stand for? What do you stand for? I'll show you the process to narrowing it down to 3 to 5 brand values. And then the last thing I want to talk about is a technique that I've been using over the last few years. I can swear by it because I've been doing it, and I think it will help you. And that technique is consistency. So you might not have the perfect brand. You might not have a gigantic budget for your business or your blog, but consistency can help you outpace your competitors. It can help your brand stand out, and I'll explain why. I mentioned figuring out what your finish line is. Some of you blog for fun. It started out as a hobby, and you do it because you feel like it, or you do it because it's fun, or you do it because it's a great way to meet people, or it's a good way to just get something off your chest. There's nothing wrong with blogging for fun. I've been blogging for fun for 10 years. There are some blogs that I do that you couldn't pay me to stop doing it. I'm just doing it because I enjoy it, or because I like being out in the blogging community. Now, there are other blogs I do because they're part of my marketing strategy. They're part of the company that I run. But if your goal is simply to do your blog as a hobby, that's perfectly fine. If you get enjoyment out of it, if you get some kind of spiritual benefit out of it, the end. That's it. You don't have to worry about this next part. But if you are considering turning your blog into a business, if your blog is already part of your business, whether it is the core part of the business or just the outreach, interactive, marketing, sales tool of your business, you need to set a goal or several goals. You need to look down the road and figure out, what do I want to accomplish in a year? If you were to tell me that the goal of your blog is to increase brand awareness, I would shake your hand and say, that's great, but I think you need to take a step further. You need to make sure that your goal is measurable, that there are some numbers behind it. Now, I'm a big believer in numbers. Some people like to go by their gut. Some people like to use anecdotal evidence. Some people like to use numbers. I like to use numbers. I don't think one way is better than the other. This is just the method that I'm used to evaluating things. But when you are setting up your goal, having some numbers attached to it will help you figure out if you're reaching it or not. Let me give you a couple of examples to make it easier. Say your blog has, not much readership, and by the end of the year, so December 31st, you want to increase that readership by 50 readers. It could be subscribers, it could be unique users, it could be RSS feed subscribers, it could be email subscribers, however you define it. Between now and December 31st, you want 50 more subscribers. That's a goal. It has a time frame, and it has a number that you want to hit. If you are looking to monetize your blog, and you take advertising, a goal could be, in 2015, I want to increase revenue from ads by $1,000. So if by December 31st you book $1,001 in revenue, you've successfully completed your goal. So you notice that there's a time frame, you have to get it done by a certain point, and there's a number that you can measure against. This is fine and dandy in terms of your blog, but how does brand fit into that? I like to think of blogs and branding hand in hand. How does your brand affect your blog and your goals? If you are increasing readership by 50 readers by the end of the year, is your brand one that attracts readers or pushes them away? When you get them to subscribe, what does that look like, and how does that coordinate with your brand? If you send them email newsletters to keep up the subscription, how does that integrate with your brand on your blog? If you were to add $1,000 in advertising revenue, you might start out with putting together a media kit. Carol, you recently did a media kit for your blog, right?
Yes.
And so Carol rebranded her site, and she's got a media kit so that companies can advertise on it. I don't know if this was Carol's process, but your process might be, well, before you get the media kit, you've got to do some research and so on, and set up your goal. How does the brand play into that? Well, first of all, is your brand attracting the target audience that these companies want to reach? Because if there's overlap, then you're in great shape. If there's not, then you have to figure out if you're targeting the wrong companies, or if your brand is not tightly focused on that right audience. Again, does it attract or repel readers and consumers that might see the sponsor's ad? The media kit is going to be reflective of your brand. Does it show the same tone, the same attitude, the same style, the same values that they would see looking through your blog? So you set the goal that's measurable. That's way, way, way down the line. That's December 31st. That's future Wade's problem. What about today? What about tomorrow? You might want to set up some interim deadlines and steps, mini goals. You set those up so that you can make progress on a regular basis. How do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
Thank you. One bite at a time. You break it down into manageable steps. So again, if you're adding 50 readers by the end of the year, by the end of May, you might figure out what newsletter service you're going to use or what plugin you're going to use. By the end of June, you might install it on your site, or you might have your developer install it on your site. By the end of July, you might create some sort of free incentive to sign up for the list. It might be like a downloadable PDF book or a white paper or a giveaway or something, so that there's more incentive for them to sign up for your newsletter. By the end of August, you need to get your first 10 subscribers and so on. So if you know by the end of May you've got to figure out which newsletter service you've got to use, then you know that within the next few weeks you've got to go look at some mail list service, or you need to ask your peers, or you need to go subscribe to other blogs and see how theirs works. If you were to add $1,000 in revenue to your blog, You might start by making the media kit. But if you don't know what's in one, you might go look at other media kits, or you might go ask other bloggers who've done one before. And then you've got to figure out what your rate is. And then you've got to put it together. So again, these are steps that get you to the media kit. You put that on your site. Then you figure out, okay, do I want to contact advertisers, or do I want to create a mechanism where they can contact me? So these are steps that you've got to do before you can even start signing advertisers to contracts and gaining that revenue. But 8 months' time, you know, if your goal is to do it by December 31st, that's plenty of time if you just take it one step at a time. It seems overwhelming if you say, I got to get $1,000 by December 31st. It's a lot easier if you say, well, today I'm going to go look at some media kits. And tomorrow I'm going to write out some elements that I want in my media kit. How does your brand fit into these mini goals? Again, you're thinking about every step of the way. How is your newsletter going to look? How is the sign-up mechanism going to look? How is it complementary to your brand? When you put together the media kit, when you reach out to advertisers, you've got to be thinking about that brand. It's got to be top of mind. Because if you're not thinking about it, your readers are going to be looking at it, your potential advertisers are going to be looking at it, they're going to make snap judgments based on it. Just as we all make snap judgments when we visit other news sites and websites and social media and blogs and so on. So make sure that your brand is well represented. So we're talking a lot about goals. If your blog is business related in any way, or if you're going to turn it into a business, you know, you've got to set the goals and you've got to set those mini goals in between. You might recognize all of this by its more formal name, which is a business plan. If this is your business, or it's going to become your business, even if it's just part-time, even if it's only on the margins, on the nights and weekends, let me strongly encourage you to put together a business plan. It can be 1 page long, it can be 50 pages long, it can be 150 pages long. But you need to talk about who your audience is, what are the ways you're going to monetize it, who your competitors are, what your marketing strategy is going to be. It's not written in stone. You can change it as you go along. You can evolve and make additions to it and adjust it along the way, because you're going to face different things as you put it together. So I mentioned I do Y'all Connect, which is this blogging and social media conference I do on June 12th. And it's in its 3rd year. I have plans written out for marketing and for different revenue streams. And these plans in year 3, they're different from what I had in year 1. And they're going to be different in year 5. But right now I'm working through year 3 steps because it's coming up really quickly and I've got to put a move on. But I've got to have something in place. Now I'm not going to hit everything on that list. It's a one-person operation, but that's okay. When I wrote it out with grand ambitions. But I can always go back and refer to it, and I usually refer to it at least once a week, if not more, to figure out where I am and what needs to happen. And not just up till June 12th, from June 13th all the way through December 31st, because this is a year-round thing for me. So you can take courses in it, you can ask friends and relatives who have written business plans before, you can get books from this library. I went ahead and pulled them off the shelf for you so no one else can take them. There are lots of ways to learn about them, but if you're going to turn your blog into a business, or it is a part of a standing business, if you don't have a business plan in place, let me strongly encourage you to take these goals and write them out. And by the way, you might be the only person who ever sees that business plan. That's perfectly fine. Some people assume that business plans are for investors and banks and so on, but if you are bootstrapping it, if you are doing it, financing it entirely on your own, you might be the only person who ever sees it. That's perfectly okay. You don't have to write it with the intention of sharing it or with a bigger audience in mind. You're writing it because you want to get your plans out of your head and down on a paper or into a file in the computer. So set some goals that are measurable, make sure that there are interim deadlines and steps in there, and formalize it into a business plan if need be. Once you have your goal in place, you want to think carefully about what your brand is, what it means to you and to other people. What are your brand values? There are different ways that you can get to brand values, formal process or focus groups, but you need to get to those core 3, 4, or 5 values so that you can maintain your brand, so that you can further it, so that you can stand out from other blogs. I'm not going to ask if any of you have done online dating, but I've done it for a few years, and
God bless you.
yeah.
Not that I've done it.
Well, for those who may not be in the know, I was on eHarmony for a few years, and then I was on Mesh.com for a few years. And the first thing you do when you sign up is you fill out a profile. And it's a really simple form. I mean, a 5-year-old could fill it out. Name, eye color, height, what do you like, where do you live, but also like, your education and your job and what are you looking for. And you can spend as much or as little time as you want to on it. Now, I'm a writer by trade, and if you write even part-time, you might know that sometimes writers have a hard time with one subject themselves, which is ironic because what subject do you know better in the world than yourself? But I filled out the form and posted it, and I started looking at profiles. I looked at profiles of women because that's who I wanted to date. But the funny thing is, I never saw any men's profiles. So I had nothing to compare it against. Like, I saw my profile, and then I saw 30 women's profiles. But because they were looking for different things, I had no basis of comparison between my profile and someone else's profile. So I looked at women who were on eHarmony or Match, and I might look at like 20 in a row. And I noticed something, which is after I looked at them, I couldn't remember much about any of the 20 profiles I just looked at. They'd all been filled out. They all had photos. As far as I knew, they were all real people. But they didn't stand out. Like, it was just kind of this hazy blur. And if I went back and looked at them again, I might still have the same kind of generic impression. And then I started to wonder, I wonder if that's a problem with my profile. Is this why when I reach out I'm not hearing back from a lot of people, or I'm not getting contacts from people who are on the site? So I went to my friend Jen Barnett, who's a good friend of mine, and she is a marketing whiz. All these ideas I'm throwing at you, I just stole from Jen. She just didn't want to get up early this morning, so I'm doing this. But she's known me a long time, and so I showed her my profile because I knew she would give me a good critique and read through it and be constructive about it. So she looks through my profile, and she looks at me and she says, "This is terrible. I mean, it's so boring. It doesn't mean anything." And I was prepared for bad news, but I mean, that hurt. But she was being honest. I mean, she wasn't saying it to hurt my feelings. She was saying it because there was vast room for improvement. So she pointed out some stuff, like on the profile it says, I like music. Well, big deal. Everyone in this room likes music. But I mean, is music Katy Perry, or is it Clint Black? Is it classical music? Is it opera? Is it hip hop? Is it electronic dance? Music's a huge category, but I hadn't specified what I like and what I don't like. And it says I like movies. Great, I think everyone in this room likes movies. But what's that mean? I mean, do you like documentaries, or do you like black and white silent movies, or do you like 3D action adventure? Do you like Spielberg, or do you like Scarlett Johansson? And again, this is just a broad spectrum, and I had really failed to do my job. And let's talk about myself. So she's leading me up to her most important point, and it really just kind of hit me in the gut, because it was difficult to hear from her, even a close friend. And she said, "You are afraid to put yourself out there. You are afraid of being rejected for who you are." And that was absolutely correct. I mean, she had diagnosed it perfectly. I had not put myself out there. I just put out this boring, generic version that could have read like anyone else's profile. But I understood what she was saying. Like, I finally got it. And so I just wiped the slate clean. I just filled out that profile form again. And I took my time on it, and I put a lot of thought into it, and put all my skills to work. Because I mean, again, it's all writing. It's just answering questions in writing. And I showed it to her before I posted it online, and she said, "This reads like you. This sounds like you. This is you." So I passed. We are all afraid at some point to put ourselves out there, because by doing so, we face the possibility of rejection. But in not putting ourselves and not putting our brands out there for people to see and to judge, we will not be able to connect with the right audience, with the right readers, with the right fans, with the right customers, with the right advertisers and sponsors. Yes?
And is this what I noticed? I'm looking at the slides
Yeah.
going through, and you've got one that's involved, honest, smart, funny, articulate. Is that what you came up with when you were creating the new page?
Yeah. So what Catherine just mentioned is the slide that we're on has my brand values. And it's not related to my dating profile, it's just related to my brand overall. But that dating profile was the starting point. That's when I started to get it. This is when I started to make a connection about branding and putting yourself out there and connecting, making the right connections. In defining your brand values, you have options on how to do it. First is you can work with an agency or a brand expert or a consultant like me. Jen does brand evaluations. She sits down with companies for 3 to 4 hours, and they talk about the company's history and its mission and its business goals and what it stands for and who its audience is and who its people are. And she comes up with this long list of adjectives, positive and negative, that represent the brand. And then through a process, she narrows it down to 3, 4, or 5 brand values. So I sat down and did this process with her because, A, I wanted to go through it myself. I wanted to understand the process from the inside. B, I wanted to know what my brand values are. So the brand values that we came up with aren't related to my company. They're not related to Y'all Connect. They're just who I am as a professional, as a person. So involved, smart, honest, funny, articulate. Those are the 5, right? Involved, honest, smart, funny, articulate. Some of you have met me before, so you know me on some degree. We've talked, we've hung out. You can make some kind of evaluation as to whether those are the 5 brand values. The rest of you who I may have just met today, you've heard me talk for a few minutes. Those words mean nothing to you. They're just words. Do they represent my brand? Do they represent who I am online and offline? Well, let's look at them real quick. Articulate. You'll give me articulate, right? You'll give me that as a freebie. No one's raised their hand and said, I don't know what you're talking about. Please repeat yourself. So articulate. Smart. Smart enough to at least have learned from some of the mistakes I've made along the way. Smart enough to be able to dig it and do the homework and share those insights with you. And smart enough to steal from others who are really, really good at this stuff. So, smart, articulate. Honest. I like to shoot straight. I like to tell stories about what I've been through. I don't think anyone else would dare tell those stories or make them up. But I like to give it to you so that you can use it as you see fit. So honest, smart, articulate, funny. If it makes me laugh, I'll put it in the presentation. I think some of you have laughed a couple of times. So that just leaves involved. Well, I like speaking to groups. I like sharing what I learned blogging. I like connecting with other bloggers, whether it's on Twitter or by email or on the phone or in person. This is one of the few opportunities in the year that I get out in front of audiences and get a chance to talk about different aspects of blogging. So involved, honest, smart, funny, articulate. I think Jen got it right. We did this a few years ago, and those values have stuck. Now, those aren't the only 5 things I am, but if you get down to the most important ones, that's what I identify with. That's what I put out there. And I don't have to work at it because she nailed it. I don't have to work at being involved or honest or smart or funny or articulate. That's who I am. You are something else. You are distinct in personality, in values, in mission, in beliefs. Your company is different from mine. Your blog is different from mine. You just need to make sure that it's well defined. So I mentioned the first way to define brand values is you can sit down with a consultant or an agency or a branding expert. If your resources are more limited, let me give you a different approach. Put together a focus group. That focus group should be only your closest friends, or your best readers, or your longest serving customers, or your most trusted colleagues. People who really know your blog and your brand, because you're going to quiz them. You're going to get a whiteboard or a chalkboard or a poster board, and they're going to list out adjectives about your brand, positive and negative, and you're going to write them all down. And this is going to take you some time, but you're going to come up with a list of 50 adjectives, maybe 100 adjectives. But you know they mean something because, again, these are coming from trusted sources. And then you are going to narrow down that list to 3, 4, or 5. One way you can do that is everyone gets a marker and they go up to the whiteboard and they get to pick their 10 favorites and just put little tick marks by their 10 favorites. And your entire group does that, and then everything that didn't get a vote, you erase it. And everything only got 1 vote, you erase it. And you start to whittle that list down from 50 to maybe 10. And then maybe you have a second round of voting to narrow it down. You could do a survey. This is how we got the topic for today's seminar. We sent out a list of 10 topics related to blogging. And all of you took the survey online from a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being most important to you. You ranked each of the 10 topics. And then we scored them accordingly. I took all of your votes, and we ranked all the topics by score. And branding came out on top. You can do that with all of your brand values. And then you don't have to just limit it to your focus group. You could send it to all of your blog readers. You could send it to all of your friends. But you can use all of that information that people know about you. People who know you really well, people who know you sort of well, people who barely know you, and narrow down those brand values. But this gives you a simpler way to put it together and come up with those core values. You've got to get it down to 3, 4, or 5. We're going to go into that a lot more in the last part. But 10. You may be tempted to keep it at 10 because all of those 10 values reflect who you are. But I must insist that you get it to no more than 5. We could do an exercise where I take a company, let's say Apple. All of you are familiar with Apple, even if you don't own Apple products. You may be familiar with them from owning them. You may be familiar from using them at work or at home. You may be familiar because your friends or family members own them. You may be familiar with them from their marketing campaigns or their reputation or something else. So I go to that whiteboard and you just start telling me adjectives that describe Apple. And then we go through and vote them down to the core 3 values for Apple. Now how do I test that? How do I make sure that all of you with your collective brain power have defined Apple's brand accurately? One test is I try and find a group that's dissimilar to this group in every way. So it's going to be mostly men. I don't want them to have ever blogged before. So mostly men, non-bloggers, and I'll just pick a different part of the country. So we're in Alabama, so I'll just fly to Idaho. And I'll pull together like 30 male non-bloggers, and I'll list these 3 adjectives out. I'll say, these are the brand values we came up with for Apple. And you just tell me, number 1, true or false, number 2, true or false, number 3, true or false. I'm willing to bet they're going to agree with you 100%. that you picked 3 brand values. Now if we picked 10 brand values, there's going to be a strikeout somewhere. They're going to disagree at some point. But those 3 core brand values that you come up with for this company, they work because I go to any audience, and if they have any familiarity with Apple as a product or service, as a company, they'll come to the same conclusion you did. You want people to instantly recognize your brand based on those core values. We'll talk about that in a second. So you set your goals, and then you define those brand values so that you understand what your brand means, not just to yourself, but to other people. The last part is that technique I was talking about, consistency. A way to outpace other blogs, other brands, even if your budget is limited some way, even if your resources are limited in some ways. Back in 2011, I started a nonprofit group with 4 other people in Birmingham. It's called the Alabama Social Media Association, and it's a group that's dedicated to educating people on social media. Very straightforward. So just a professional organization that was going to have events and online resources and so on. When we started, it was January 2nd, 2011. We started with nothing, absolutely nothing. No money, no sponsors, no venue, no speaker, no website, no social media channels, no publicity, no volunteers, just the 5 of us. We flew in a friend of mine who had started a similar group in Baton Rouge and had done it so successfully, we had to know how she did it. January 2nd, 2011, we sat down with her for the first time, and we set a deadline for ourselves. The deadline was March 1st, so less than 60 days away, we would announce the organization and we would announce our first event. That was not a lot of time for 5 people to put together even just the basics of all of this. I'll never forget that it was like February 28th, it's the night before launch, and we're scheduled to go on one morning show in Birmingham and then a second morning show in Birmingham. So we got 2 TV stations booked to announce the organization, announce the event, announce the website, but there's one problem. We don't have a website. We slid through those first 50-something days and we didn't have a website, which was going to be kind of embarrassing getting in front of 2 big TV audiences to announce the URL and it would just come up blank. This was not from lack of trying. The website that we had planned fell through. And so like an idiot, I volunteered to put together a website
The night before.
Yeah, the night before. And when you look at the slides, you'll see a screenshot of the website. It's not the one I put up. It's much nicer, and it came later.
You do notice that you just made Carol faint.
Well, let me tell you, the website, it's the shoddiest, crummiest looking thing you ever seen. There's no screenshot of it I posted because it's that bad. I've got it on my computer, but I'm not going to show it to you. I was up till 2 or 3 in the morning. We had to be up in a few hours to go on TV. And I just basically put together what I could. Because what we needed was our name, links to our Facebook and Twitter accounts, our mission statement, and a little ticket window so you could get tickets to our first event. And that's what we got. We went on the first morning show. We went over to a different TV station, went on the second morning show, and an hour after we went off the air, sold out of tickets. Could not have done that without the website. So we're very, very fortunate. Now, if you look at the slide that has the website and the Facebook page and the Twitter account and the Flickr account and so on, you'll see the short version of the logo, which is Al Socme with the state, and then you'll see a longer version that says Alabama Social Media Association. Those of you who have it on screen, I think a couple of you do have it on screen. Do you want to take a guess as to how much time we spent on the logos? It has to be under 60 days, and how much money we spent on the logos? Catherine's guessing 0.
An hour and 0. An hour you spent time and 0 money you spent.
Is that your guess?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're guessing an hour's worth of time and
Hour and a half.
$0. Guessing an hour and a half, good.
I'm there for 2.
Bid $1.
fire to have somebody design one.
Okay, so that, I mean, and that's a great option, right? Because people need logos quickly, and if your user can't tell the difference, chances are other users won't either. And I've seen people go on 99 Designs and Fiverr and get really good logos out of it. You'd be surprised some of your favorite logos where they came from. So the secret of the logo is this. We've never told anyone this story. The only time I've told it was when I gave this presentation a month ago.
Yes, teacher.
The last week of February, a few days before launch day, March 1st, we didn't have a logo either. Now we tried, but it fell through. I mean, again, 5 people working on this in their off hours to get together all of these things. And again, like a fool, I volunteered and I said, look, I will put together a logo, but realize that it's a placeholder. We need it for the website, we need it for Facebook and Twitter, but after March 1st, we'll have a little bit more breathing room to go find the right designer, the right agency, and put all of it together, logo, color, fonts, etc. So in 10 minutes on Photoshop, I created those logos. And it looks like someone with no Photoshop skills spent 10 minutes putting those logos together. Now, whatever you may think about our branding, it didn't hold us back. We had events where 100 people or more were showing up. We had networking after-hours events where more than 60 people were showing up. We had 17 partner organizations from across the state. We had thousands of dollars in catering. We had speakers flying in from across the country for nothing to speak for our audiences. We had 50 media mentions and blog mentions. If anything, we had a fantastic brand because this brand communicated everything we needed it to. We are an organization that's committed to you to educate you in social media. The end. Our branding wasn't an excuse. Our branding didn't hold us back. Our branding was deployed consistently everywhere. I served on the board from 2011 to 2013. 2011 rolls by, that logo's still up there. 2012 rolls by, that logo is still up there. 2013 rolls by, the logo's still up there, taunting me. It was on all of our signage, videos, slides, website, social media channels, business cards, sponsor packets, name tags. It was on everything. That should tell you something about what we were looking for in a logo and that no designer met our standards. That logo that you see on screen was better than what we were offered. But in the end, it didn't matter. We may not have had the perfect brand, but we managed to accomplish everything and more because of or in spite of it. Consistency was key to all of our successes and our efforts. Your brand may never be perfect. Your site may never be perfect. But those are just excuses. You have a goal. You have interim deadlines. You have steps to take if you want to reach those goals in the time frame you set for yourself. How can you be consistent with your blog and your brand? First thing is, you got to show up. Carol, what was the topic of your last blog post?
My before and after picture of why I like it.
Just show up.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just show up.
Yeah.
I mean, that is it. You have to be present. In looking through blogs for branding examples, I occasionally ran into blogs that didn't have a post from April or March or February or January. How sad is it for me, who likes to read people's blogs, that I haven't heard from you since last year? A third of the year is gone now. If you want to be present, if you want to show up, you got to post. Doesn't mean you have to post 10 times a day, but it also means you can't post 2 or 3 times a year. You have to show up. The most perfect brand in the world is worthless if you're not using your blog as intended. It's invisible. Look at Alabama Social Media Association, imperfect brand, mediocre at best, and it succeeded wildly. Why? Because we were everywhere. You could always find a new newsletter. You could always find our videos online. You could always find the next event that was being posted. We showed up. The blog was one tool, social media was another tool, videos were another tool, events were another tool. Not just your blog. If you do an email newsletter, you got to put it out on the schedule you promised, once a month, once a week. You have to show up. If you do social media for your blog, you have to be present. Now that does not mean you have to have outlets on every social media channel. It just means you have to have the ones that coincide with your audience, that make the most sense. But I can make the same argument about visiting Facebook pages for blogs. If I haven't seen an update in a couple of months, you're not showing up. If someone asks a question or posts something to your page and it goes unanswered, you are not showing up. It's almost better not to have that outlet than to show that massive indifference to your readers and your fans and your customers. So, whatever you think of your own brand, you still have to use it. You have to deploy it. You have to put it out there. Easiest, simplest way is to at least post on a regular basis. But then fulfill the other promises you've made, whether it's social media channels or email or business cards or you name it. So, first is consistency in branding. Second is going back to those brand values. 3, 4, or 5 brand values. This is where it becomes really important. One of the challenges of blogging, and I talk a lot about this in Power of Storytelling, one of the challenges of blogging is it's nonlinear storytelling. Let me explain it a different way. If you and I go and pick the same book off the shelf from this library and read it, we're going to get the same experience. We're both going to start at page 1. I'm going to read through 200 pages. We'll get to the end, and then we've gotten the story as the author intended, a linear story from beginning, middle to end. If you and I go run out and see the Avengers movie, even at 2 different theaters, we're going to get the same experience. We go in at the beginning, we sit through the middle for a couple of hours, and then we get to the end. Linear storytelling as intended by the screenwriter and the director. Blogs are different. We don't think of it that way because we are telling it in a linear fashion. We wrote the first post weeks, months, or years ago, and then we wrote them sequentially. Rarely do we jump out of order and write posts ahead of ourselves and then go backwards. The challenge with brands and blogs is that your readers are always coming in the middle of your story. They're coming in the middle of your story. How on earth are they going to make sense of what your story is when every new reader comes in the middle? It's like if 10 more people walked in right now and tried to make heads or tails of what I'm talking about in terms of brands and blogging. It's like we took the same book off the shelf and started reading at page 100, and then jumped to page 150, and then jumped backwards to page 50. It makes absolutely no sense. But we expect our readers to make sense of this. We expect our potential advertisers and sponsors to make sense of this story. But they're always coming in the middle. There's no coherent way to tell a story. Even if I told you the order to go read my blog in, you're not going to follow that. Every reader comes in differently. They might have found it through search. They might have found it through a link on your Facebook page. They may have found it because you sent it to them. They may have gotten it off your business card. And they go read a post. And then a majority of them stop. That's it. They go on with their lives. They don't do anything else. A very few of them might go look at your About page or another post, one you've suggested or one they just stumble upon in your blog. And then a very, very tiny percentage might sign up for your newsletter or subscribe to your Facebook page or connect with you in some meaningful way, bookmark your site. But the rest, they just came in, maybe read the first couple of sentences, and then they're out. Well, we do that all the time, right? We all go look at videos and Facebook posts and blog posts and news articles. We don't read everything from beginning to end. We might look at the headline, we might look at a photo, we might stop the video 10 seconds in because it's a stupid video, or it doesn't apply to us, or it wasn't what we thought it was going to be. We make those snap judgments because we don't have time to waste. Well, neither do your readers. So if the problem is that every new reader is coming in the middle of your story, what do? You're going to saturate every blog post with your brand values. Permeate everything that you do online with those values. So if you go and look at my blog posts, in some fashion they are going to be involved, honest, smart, funny, or articulate. That's deliberate. That's who I am. If you are not getting that, it's going to read off brand, or you're not going to get to know my brand very well. That's the only chance I may ever have to connect with you, is that one solitary blog post that you pick out at random. It might be from today, it might be from a week ago, it might be from 5 years ago. I don't get a say in that. But I'm willing to bet that if you picked one of my 4,800 posts out at random, it's going to be involved, honest, smart, funny, or articulate. Can you imagine trying to saturate it with 10 brand values? That's where it gets to be next to impossible. But it is not just blog posts. I mean, I send out email newsletters. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I give presentations. I talk to people one-on-one. That is my opportunity to be involved, honest, smart, funny, articulate. That's a good opportunity to represent who I am, what I stand for, why you should or should not connect with me as a brand. So you have to be deliberate. You have to think about what those core brand values are and how they manifest themselves in every single blog post. That blog post might be 100 words long, might be 1,000 words long, you might have one photo in it, you might have 20 photos in it. But that's your one opportunity to get someone to understand your brand in seconds. Because if you do connect with them, that is their chance to see more chapters of your story. They will never get it in the same order as anyone else, because there's no way to do it. I wish they would read from the first post and read to the very end, but they're never going to do that. So this is your opportunity to take your brand values and saturate everything you do online with them. So you got to show up. You've got to saturate your post with your brand values. As you get better at this, your brand stands out. You become more distinct. You don't blend in with other bloggers. People identify what your brand is, what your company is, what your blog is, what you stand for. The great news is some of them will be attracted to your brand and they'll stick around. They'll subscribe. They might buy products from you. They might click on your ads. They might take advantage of your services. You've made a connection. But there's also a downside to this. Putting yourself out there is not only the opportunity for people to respond to you in a positive way. I don't know if you've been on the internet lately, but some people who don't connect with brands, who reject them, they're pretty vocal about it. They're more than happy to tell you what they don't like about you, your lineage, your brand, your company, your values, your writing style, your photos, your mission, your products, your services. They can write about it at great length. It is not a pleasant experience. If you stand out, you are also giving people the opportunity to reject you, and not just reject you, but reject you very harshly. Trolls, negative commenters, haters. I worked in journalism for a long period of time, so this is a group that I'm intimately familiar with, even before the rise of the digital age. You know, if you go back and look at my first version of my dating profile, it was very easy to miss. And therefore you couldn't reject me because I just blended in. You couldn't pick me out of a lineup. I like music, I like movies, big deal. I had to put myself out there. And that gave me the chance to connect with the right people. But it also would be painful because I'd be rejected time and time again. And I wouldn't be rejected for some persona I made up. I'd be rejected for who I am, something that I cannot change no matter what. That's tough. That's very difficult to put yourself out there and to face rejection time and again. But it is unfortunately the only way to also connect with the right people. Jen said it best. It's better to be rejected up front than have someone down the line reject you because you're not who you turned out that they thought you would be. I'd rather make those real connections from the beginning. You know, when people were looking at my profile, the people who saw something that was worth connecting to, that would be something that had a better chance of lasting, that would actually be able to make a true connection. So putting yourself out there, putting your brand out there, defining it correctly, deploying it consistently, opens you up to both the high of real connections, but also the low of rejection, public rejection. Now, when people leave negative comments or bad reviews, or just shout you down, you've got a couple of ways to go. One is you can just ignore them. You don't have to deal with negative commenters if you don't want to. You could just leave comments off your blog, or you could just automatically delete them. You can handle them however you want to. I saw, you see tons of memes when you're on Facebook and Twitter all the time. I saw one that actually stuck with me, and it's actually made a difference in my life. And it was a poster that said, "You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to." It's really easy to be a brand in a vacuum. It's easy to be a perfect brand in a vacuum. I can be involved, honest, smart, funny, articulate if I don't have to listen to anyone's feedback. But it's also really difficult to connect to people in a vacuum. So if you choose to respond to negative commenters, you have the option to respond within your brand values or outside of them. And it's a big opportunity. Because if you know what your brand values are, this is an opportunity for the world at large to recognize what your brand actually means. Because again, it's easy to practice those values in a vacuum. Much more difficult when you're dealing with messy, nasty, ignorant, jealous, spiteful human beings. It's really tough. It used to be when you come onto my blog, I worked on my blog, so I've worked on my blog for 10 years and I've worked on other blogs. But I'm really proud of it. I still write on it every day. And it used to be if you came on and left a nasty comment, I would hit back twice as hard. Not proud of it, but just happens to be one of my talents. And so if you took the time to say something mean to me on my blog, I wouldn't delete your comment. I'd write something so harsh, you'd go crying to your mama. I like to think that maybe I've mellowed a little bit over the years, and so I can respond within brand values. If I made a mistake and they're pointing it out, perhaps not in the kindest fashion, I can correct the mistake and write a comment, taking full responsibility, and make it funny so that we all laugh because of it. So funny, one of my brand values. If someone writes something harsh or spiteful, I can say, what you said hurt my feelings, and I don't appreciate it. I'm glad you read the post, and I hope you continue to read the site. That's honest. It's articulate. Hopefully it's smart or smarter than just lashing back. You have the opportunity to respond within your brand values. If the tone of your blog is happy and positive, you can maintain a happy and positive tone even if someone else is trying to tear you down. Because other readers are going to see that and recognize your brand and that you're sticking to your brand values. Advertisers are going to see that and recognize your core values actually mean something. You don't have to work towards them because that's who you are. Different example, if your blog posts are snarky in tone, which is great because I love to read snarky posts, nothing wrong with that. But if someone leaves a mean comment, You can be snarky in your response. It's what's expected, right? That is within the tone and style and brand of your blog. When you see me converse with people on Twitter, sometimes I'm mean. Sometimes I'll just punch right back. It's not completely unexpected because that's just part of who I am, for better or for worse. It doesn't fall within my brand values, but it matches the interactions that I have on Twitter from time to time.
The other side of it, honesty.
Yeah. I mean, it's a mean, different shaded type of honesty, but yeah, it is a form of honesty. But if you know your core brand values, when you get trolls and negative commenters and haters, you have options on how to respond. You don't have to just go with your gut. You can be smart about how you deploy your brand, even when responding to someone else. So you set your goals, you define your brand values, and you deploy them consistently. Let me stop for a second and tell you about Y'all Connect. It's coming up June 12th. We've got 3 of our speakers of our lineup so far, but it's blogging and social media and digital marketing. It's a full-day conference in Birmingham. All of the postcards have links to Y'all Connect and to the slides, so just follow that link. And if you have questions, my email's on that postcard, so you're welcome to take extras because I have extras for you to take to your friends and your colleagues. But it's a lot of fun. It's the 3rd year we're doing it. We've had a great turnout from Huntsville the previous 2 years, so I'd love to see another big group come down. But you can drive down that morning and stay and have dinner in town. We feed you breakfast and lunch and an afternoon snack, but you can have dinner in town. You can stay the night if you want to, or you can drive right back. I know some of you have got kids and weekend plans and other things to get back to, but we'd love for you to spend the day with us in Birmingham, June 12th. We bring in speakers from across the country. And if for some reason you are tied up that day, you'll also see on the site we have a new video option where you can buy 1 or more of the videos from our conference because we videotape every single session, and we share clips from them on our YouTube channel and on our blog. So there are lots of ways you can get involved with Y'all Connect, and of course you're welcome to ask me questions about it at any point. But I'd love to see y'all come down there. It's a fun event, and as I pointed out, I try and work on it throughout the year to make it as good as it can be.
It's awesome. It's a very good conference. I went to it the first year. I couldn't go the second year, but I bought the videos and love it. I'll plan to go this year.
The nice thing about the videos, by the way, is, because we run 3 tracks simultaneously, there may be 2 sessions that pop up at the same time that you can't get to both, and you may not have a buddy who's taking notes in the second session, but you can always go back later and get that video, because they're available. When you buy it, you can download it, you can stream it, you can use it at your convenience, and they're available on all devices. Yeah.
If you extend, do you have access to the videos?
We give you a discount on the videos. So we don't build in the charge in the session just because some people they get their 3 to 5 sessions and they're good to go. I was talking to a friend of mine, so we're maybe this close to announcing the keynote speaker. I think she's going to say yes, but she was suggested by a friend of mine in Birmingham, and so at first she wasn't sure she was going to the conference here, and it's just because her brother is getting married that same weekend. He's getting married on Sunday, June 14th. The conference is on June 12th. But she suggested the keynote speaker because she loves this keynoter. She's seen her speak at other blogging conferences, and I think we're going to get her. And now she's saying, I think I'm going to show up for the morning and then leave by lunchtime, because she's got to go to a rehearsal dinner, and she's got to do all of she's a maid of honor, so she's got all of the family activities related to, fortunately the wedding's in Birmingham, but I mean, I told her up front, like, I'll be happy to, like, make the video available to you. She's like, no, I want to see her in person. I'm like, that's a huge mark of endorsement that she is willing to maybe kind of push family aside for just a little bit of time, because she's neck deep in getting ready for the wedding, obviously. But I'm excited about the keynoter. I'm hoping I can announce her on Tuesday, but we'll see if we get all the paperwork cleared in time. If you have questions, when you go to that link on the site, there's a contact form. You can reach me. You can go to birminghamblogging.com to see more posts about blogging, social media, branding, etc. And you can ask me questions at Wade on Tweets on Twitter. I'll take questions on Twitter at any time. And of course, you may have questions before we wrap up. All of these adventures that I've had in blogging, they've not all been successful. I've had quite a few detours along the way, but I have learned a lot about how brands can boost your marketing and boost your business goals, help you accomplish them faster and more easily. Set your goals. Think about what your brand values are at the core. Be consistent in how you put your brand out there with your blog. It goes way beyond just the logo and the color scheme and the fonts and the look and feel of it. If you tightly integrate all of it together, there's no reason why you can't stand out and be the best blog and brand that you can be. Thank you.
Thank you.